Hello, today I want to show how we can interact with Google Sheets from NodeRED. So if all you want is to read data and you don't mind giving anonymous access to a Google Sheet, there's a special node that you can install which just takes the ID of a Google Sheet, and then when you run it you will get the result back. The way this works is that if you open the Google Sheet and you go to the URL, you will up here see an ID of that Google Sheet. And what you do is you copy that ID and you use that as a parameter for this node. In this case, I'm basically sending it in the payload node, but you can do whatever you want. But if you need to change the data, or if you need access to a sheet that is not publicly available, you need to authenticate in some way. And there's a couple of ways you can do it, but overall the two main ways of doing it is using service accounts or OAuth. Service accounts means that then if you let's say that you're in a Google organization, then an administrator can create a service account and then give that service account access to one or more sheets. That service account is also a user, so you can give access to that user to specific sheets. So instead of an admin giving access to everything, you could, on a per sheet basis, give access to this. If you're not an organization, you can do the same, but then it's just only for you. It's a good way of doing it, but it's also a lot of hassle and not a lot of people will actually be doing that. So the other way of doing it is using OAuth. So with OAuth, you as a developer or organization create OAuth credentials. And once you create those credentials can request access to a scope, in this case a Google Sheet, and then have access to that item. So I created a OAuth credential here. I added it inside this node, the credentials for this node. And what is interesting here is that I have a redirect URL. So Google might not allow this in the long run, and if that is the case, then this will only work with a public accessible node-red where we generate a URL. This node does generate a URL, but for this demo I'm just going to use the localhost :1 trick. And then we need to add a scope, and the scope is the kind of permissions that we want to have access to. So you have to imagine this is for any random user. This could be someone you don't know, it doesn't really matter. Someone has a credential and those credentials now need access to your Google Sheet, and the way we do that is that we authorize that. So the first thing is that you have to type in this information. It has to look like this. Then you click OK and you click deploy, and once you click deploy, this will create an endpoint on this node-red. And that endpoint needs to be there as part of the authentication process. Once that is done, you can click authorize me. So once I click authorize me, I can decide to log in. And if the person creating the OAuth credentials hasn't been approved by Google, which is a relatively automated process, but I just wanted to show you what this looks like, you will get this warning. And if you are okay with that, you can click advanced and then click continue, and then you get this screen, which you would get either way. Any way you would get this the first time. This screen tells you that the user that created the OAuth credentials is requesting permission to this on your account. So this is where you can see what we're requesting access to. In this case, I'm requesting access to see, edit, create and delete Google Sheets, right? So I'm gonna allow that and click continue. So as you can see, I'm getting the code up here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the URL and click copy. So code equals and then the code, and then it stops here at the @ sign. And I'm going to go back here and I'm going to paste in the code. Once I've done that, I can now click the second button, Get Token. This will generate a token that now has offline access with the permissions that you just saw. And this will now allow us to do anything with Google Sheets that this user has access to. So I click Update, I click Done, I click Deploy, and now those credentials are saved encrypted inside the OpenFlow database. So imagine that I have this sheet here. I can again grab the ID, and using that ID I can now construct a URL that can only work with that sheet, and I need to define a range on a sheet inside the sheet that I want to work with. So sheet 1 exclamation mark, and then I can define what part of the sheet that I want. In this case it's A1 to D7. So I'm gonna go back and say A1 to D7. So this URL will now allow me to get the data. I can also define if I want it by row or by column. Let's just take the default, which is by row. If I then use the Google node and do a get, I will get that data back. So if I click Submit, here are the data from the Google Sheet, right? So if on the other thing that I might want to do is I might want to update it. So if I copy the values and I go over here, here is the syntax for updating this. Let me just quickly set this up. There we go. So here I have the same values that was in the Google Sheet, right? So maybe I want to update this to be, I don't know, Washington, LA, Paris. Yeah, I'm not going to write a lot of names here. I just want to show that we can update the values, right? So this is the values that I want to update this with. And the way that I update it is by doing a put to that Google Sheet. So if I click Deploy and I submit it, and we go back to the Google Sheet, you will see that now it says Paris all the way down, even yeah, whatever. So I guess this is how you can do it. It's not the most user-friendly thing in the world, but it is what it is, and Google wants to keep things secure, and this is one way of doing that. So I hope this helps, and good luck.